The top two players in the class of 2026 in the state of Utah have both locked in visits to the University of Utah. So can Utah close the deal, land these two premier playmakers, and what would it mean to add both? We're talking about it on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time listening to the show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with everyone in the YouTube comments. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by TurboTax. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to turbotax.com today and get matched with your expert. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah. Excited to be joined on today's show by Moose Bingham. Moose is currently really studying something right now, aren't you, Moose? For our audio listeners, he was reading over some notes. Well prepped, right, Moose?
So I am actually really prepped. I was looking, I've got the dual screen thing going. So
nice.
For our visual listeners, they're like, Moose isn't paying attention, but our audio listeners will know for a fact that I am locked in Utes.
That is dialed in. Well, we always appreciate you making the time to come on. Moose, former kicker at Utah, handles all things recruiting as well with War Room. He does a great job breaking it down. I should have introduced you correctly, by the way. The man, the myth, the legend, Moose Bingham, as he has in his little under description we use in our Restream app here. So Moose, big news for Utah. Both of the top two players have locked in visits in the state of Utah, and even Bamu Lutalo just committed yesterday, decommitted from Oregon. So that's another big player. The fact that Utah at least has a chance to land all three of the top guys, and not like just saying they have a chance, like all three of them. Utah is still in on Mulitalo. They have visits locked up with the top two guys. So the first one, the top guy in the state, is four-star athlete Salesi Moa. He'll be visiting Utah on May 31st, 6'2", 175 pounds. This is a guy, he's at Fremont now. When he was at Weber early, just exploded onto the scene as a receiver. I think this guy is special. I think he can play receiver, defensive back. I really think there are a lot of places you could put him. He has tremendous skills because they're tremendous athleticism, hence why he is, even when the initial ranking, he was a top 100 player in the class of 26. The second guy we're going to talk about in a moment is too. This guy is a game changer. I especially don't want him going to BYU, but if Utah could land him, that would be massive, Moose.
Well, I don't think he's going to BYU at this point. Both of his brothers have left the BYU program, one going to Michigan State, the other going to Weber State. And what you love about Salesi is his dad went to Utah. Ben Moa, phenomenal athlete, probably the best of the whole bunch if you ask him or his kids. Don't ask the kids, they won't say that. But Salesi has been really impressive. He can climb the ladder with the best of them. He is a phenomenal defensive back. I think he had 6 passes thrown his way this last year, and he intercepted 2 of them. And so he's a Smith Snowden, but a little taller. And he hasn't focused as much at DB because he's going both ways. His receiver film is ridiculous. He climbs the ladder better than anyone I've seen. He can high point the ball like 12 feet in the air, it seems. He's just floating. You think Air Mike, I think Air Moa most of the time when I see Salesi's film. The kid is just flying around. He hits hard. His older brothers were both playing in the box, and he's used to getting beaten up by those guys. So you see the youngest brother that comes around. You saw it with Puka Nacua, and he got beat up a little bit. You see it with all of these younger kids, and they usually end up being the best athletes because the expectations are so high. They've seen what it takes to get to the next level, and Salesi has done all of that and more. I've been watching him since he was a freshman at Weber, and I just get more and more impressed every time I see him on the field.
Well, you mentioned him being one of the best athletes. I mean, he's not just one of the best athletes in Utah. He's one of the best athletes in the country. He is the 40th ranked player nationally for his position. This is all 24/7 sports. They have him ranked 4th amongst athletes, top player in the state of Utah, 93 overall grade. And you just said you feel like he's best used on the defensive side of the ball?
Pick your poison. I'll talk to wide receiver coaches, and they're like, he's a wide receiver all day long. Defensive coaches, he's a DB. What are you talking about? I think he can slide into that nickel position and even be in the box. And I think he could even fly out to corner. But he's like the typical definition of a model. He's a block of clay that you can mold into whatever you want. And that's what you want on your team. Just a bunch of guys where it's like, let's find the best position for you. And I don't know where that's going to be. And that's a phenomenal conundrum to have when you're talking about a recruit.
It absolutely is. And yes, I absolutely think Moa can be a guy for Utah at the next level, receiver or DB. I fell in love with him as a receiver at first, but I know he's also done a tremendous job as a defensive back. So, I mean, either way, if Morgan Scalley's working with him or if Utah's new receiver coach is working with him, either way would be a massive win. Utah, obviously not the only guy in on one of the top athletes in the country. Some of the other visits he had lined up, Michigan State, Oklahoma. I will say he's ending with Tennessee. That definitely concerns me. Whatever you end with the last one, it's SEC school. We know about the difference in money as well. So we'll see how that ends up shaking out. Moa could be a tough get for Utah, but he's going to have a lot of offers. These guys are both going to be tough gets. Let's talk about our second guy now. Brock Harris is a guy that you and I have both been big fans of for a long time. Harris is, he's just tremendous. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's 6'6", 238 pounds, a 4-star prospect. And Harris is a guy that I do think has a chance to not just be a dude at the collegiate level. I think he's got NFL potential. I think you look at his size, his speed, the catch radius moves. This is a guy that if I have my pick of who I'd want Utah to land between Moa and Harris, it's no shade to Moa because he's going to be a tremendous player too. I think Harris has a chance to like be a Dalton Kincaid type of player. First round pick, I don't know that, but I think he will be an NFL guy.
I absolutely agree with that. So Brock Harris, I mean, we've been watching him since 8th grade. He is a freak, and he's so much fun to watch. His size, he's so smooth out there. He should be getting 30 touchdowns a year. I don't know why they didn't just throw the ball to him each and every down because he's such a mismatch down in St. George. Jason Beck, he does a great job coming out in 10 personnel, but like what he does in that 10 personnel, he finds mismatches. He doesn't just go and be like, we're doing 4 receivers. I've seen him go out and do 4 tight ends.
Yeah.
But you call it 10 personnel because you're sitting there and you're like, we have running backs, 1 running back, and then we've got the 4 guys. This offense is completely changed. And I think that's why Brock Harris is taking this visit. Freddie is still there. He's got a great relationship with Freddie Whittingham. But Brock Harris is a dude that he's going to demand a lot of NIL attention. And I think that's where Utah has to step up. We're talking about $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year for a player like Brock Harris. Just being transparent and honest.
Yeah.
That's what he demands on the open market. And if Utah's willing to do that, he would love to stay in the state. He is kind of a homebody, and that's not a knock on him by any stretch of the imagination. He loves hometown. He's had opportunities to go all around the country in high school, but he's like, I love the kids I grew up with. I love this atmosphere. I love being in the state of Utah. And he just does a great job with everything he's doing. And so he's one of those generational athletes. Some of his film that I watched that I was really impressed with was his defensive film recently. And I was like, this kid can get it done on both sides of the ball too. If he wanted to be a tackle, he has the perfect frame to turn into Jordan Gross if he wants to do that. He can be anywhere. He's athletic enough to be a linebacker. And so he's another one of those dudes where you're just like, I don't know where you're going to put you, but we're going to make sure that we have you. So you're going to make our team better and elevate us to the next level. And that's what Brock Harris does for your program.
Moose, you do a great job evaluating players of all different sizes, all different weights, lengths. Does Harris's height concern you at all? It's not always you see a 6'6" football player who is more, like I said, on the skinnier side just as a tight end. Do you have injury concerns about him at all?
Absolutely not. Brock Harris is a kid that takes care of his body, and it's almost a pleasant surprise when you see that. Because a lot of these kids, you talk to them, and a 6'2" kid will show up at your office, and he's like, yeah, I'm 6'6". And you're like, no, you're not. You're definitely not, bro. But Brock Harris is a kid that he told me, he's like, yeah, I'm 6'5". I met him his sophomore year in person. I'm like, dude, you might be 6'7". Yeah. He's huge. His dad was a phenomenal baseball player growing up. And Brock Harris is a kid that can take his game to the next level and then some. And I really love what's going on with Utah because there's some excitement about the offensive side of the ball. It's like they're getting unleashed. And I think Jason Beck is the type of coach that can take Utah to the next level if they allow him to.
And that's the hope and goal, whether it's Morgan Scalley eventually, or obviously right now, Kyle Whittingham. That's what it's going to be about for Utah, is getting that Utah offense on track. Brock Harris would absolutely help that, but it's still Utah, and they're going to have a really good defense. I want to talk about the defensive backs heading into spring ball, how we feel like that room is going to be shaking out leading up to the first spring practices. We're discussing that in one moment. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money Monarch Money has your back. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you just stop managing your money and start building your wealth. There are so many amazing things about Monarch Money, whether it's surprising insights. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more, all in one convenient place too. And also, speaking of convenience, all in one convenience, instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, tracking spending, and even long-term goals. It's also the easy collaboration where managing money with your partners is smoother than ever. You can track, share, and your personal account, set goals, and stay on top of everything without the stress. Take control of your financial freedom with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB. That's all caps, no spaces, for half off your first year with Monarch Money today. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is also brought to you by our friends at Factor. Factor is here to help you get the best meals you can while also trying to stay fit and healthy during your fitness journey. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor makes eating easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat up in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. I know how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. I mean, for me, I recently tried their Protein Plus meals, and they were packed with flavor and kept me full throughout the day. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in minutes. Factor has your back if you are trying to eat healthy, stay up with your fitness goals, don't have enough time to cook. That's where Factor comes in clutch. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege, 50% off, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, 50% off. That's all caps, one word, and then 50 is spelled out, but still part of the one word, no spaces. To get 50% off your first box plus free shipping, that's code LOCKEDON50 off at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Head over and try your Factor meals today. Moose Bingham back with me here. Moose, as we're talking about the Utah defensive backfield leading up to spring ball, there's a lot of excitement about Smith Snowden, I think, in particular. But the questions become like, hey, who's going to be next to Smith Snowden? Because you lose Zemayev to the NFL draft. Cameron Calhoun is now a member of the Alabama Crimson Tide. So, and even a late transfer addition was, I'm so mad at myself. I just forgot the name of the Georgia Tech defensive back.
Rabbit?
No, Rabbits is the safety. He's still there. He transferred out late.
Elijah Davis.
Elijah Davis is still there. That's right. He's not listed.
Cotton.
No, those guys are still on the roster. As I've said, I'm mad at myself. This guy they got him from Georgia Tech, and then he transferred out and left earlier this offseason. So that's right. It's on the tip of my tongue. I'm very mad at myself for forgetting who it is. I'll probably look it up here in a sec. But anyway, so you lose another depth piece in Kenan Johnson. That's who it's Kenan Johnson just came to me. So Kenan Johnson. Right. That's what I was trying to get to. But so either way, you get Smith Snowden. I think Elijah Davis is going to be the other starter too. I think right now it'll be Blake Cotton, the UC Davis transfer. He's got a lot of experience. I like his game. That's who I'm leaning towards being the third defensive back starter right now. We talk about some of the depth pieces, but as we enter spring ball, who are your top 3 corners that Utah has? We'll talk about safeties in a moment.
Corners. I really like Don Saunders, honestly. Ooh. I think that's a kid that can come in and start right away. Rock Caldwell as well. Transfer. Yeah, both those transfers. They're both juniors. They're both transfers. And I think that we've got a great coach to help them get along and get them caught up to speed as well. At the other corner, I really love Elijah Davis and I really love Blake Cotton. It's interesting because 3 of 4 of these guys that I just mentioned are transfers.
Oh, yeah.
And so it seems like the University of Utah is going really hard in the transfer portal, especially for defensive backs. And I think they're going to find a lot of success from that, getting those guys from the lower levels and having them pop up, ready to go, ready to play. But besides those 4, there's not a ton of depth at corner. And that's the one scary thing for Utah for me this year. The lucky thing is we've got a great front 7. And I think we're going to get after the quarterback. I think that they won't have to defend for that long. But those corners, they're going to make or break our season, to be honest with you. There are some high flying offenses in the Big 12, and Utah's corners are going to have to step up and then some, because if there's an injury or two, this season could go sideways real quick.
It could. And that is definitely the concern with this defensive backfield room. We'll talk about some of the other corner depth in a moment. Moose, I think a big question Utah needs to ask themselves is, hey, should we put Smith Snowden on the outside or keep him in the slot? I think that's a massive question. Snowden is a tremendously skilled player, but the height is a concern. I mean, he's 5'10", and he's a heck of a player, 4-star. He's done a great job so far. I lean towards leaving him in the slot and not just even saying about his skill set. I think that when I look at the slot depth, I don't love it. When I look at the outside corner depth, I think there's more bodies there that I feel better about. Smith Snowden is one of the best corners this team has. I think he's best utilized on the inside, and partially because of that size. How would you use Smith Snowden if you were Utah?
I mean, here's the thing. If you take Smith out, you've got Kamari Shimwell to go in, and he had 1 tackle last year.
I know.
And that's really who you're putting your whole nickel on Kamari. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I don't know. And then I don't know who's behind him, to be honest with you.
I don't either.
So Smith, if you move him around, I'm not worried about his height. His athleticism and his vertical ability is a whole nother level. I've seen Smith go against 6'4" kids and high point the ball out of their hands. So I'm not worried about that in any way, shape, or form. But you got to find Smith and put him on whoever the best player is on the other team. If they're really coming out of the slot and they've got like a Hunter Renfrow type player, you got to have Smith on that guy, or a Britton Covey type player. Smith is just your eraser. He's the guy that's going to make it so all of your other guys can do their job. And when he does his 111th, it allows the rest of the defense to really step up and almost do less because they don't have to account for as much.
Yeah, that's where it's massive to have a guy like Snowden. I think he could do fine on the outside. I do worry about some of the best bigger receivers in the Big 12 if they wouldn't get the best of him. But you're right, Smith Snowden is one. I do think he's going to be one of the best corners in this conference. And part of the reason I want to keep him inside is just because of needs. I really think Smith Snowden, Elijah Davis, I feel great about them. Blake Cotton just making that transfer up. You know, UC Davis, shout out Big Sky, but that's a big leap going up to the P4 level too. Don Saunders, another guy I was going to highlight that you already talked about, Rock Caldwell, the Gardner City Community College transfer. And then what are you going to get from the young guys? The Shemwells, you already brought up. Sammy Hunter is a guy that I'm really intrigued by too, but we haven't seen these guys. So in Morgan Scally and Sharif Shaw, we'll talk about the safeties in a moment. Like, we trust, but man, Moose, with this many unknowns, it is just like, I feel like any of these guys can go out there. I expect them to be productive, but I also think there's a legit chance the Utah defense just takes a step back, even if it's a slight step back, because of how much they lost. I think they'll still be a top 3 to 5 unit in the conference, but they were second last year, I think, in total defense. I don't expect them to be 1 this year.
No, I think they'll still be top 5 regardless, which is huge praise. And the thing is, having a top 5 defense, they're going to take a step back because they're no longer playing the time of possession game either. They're not running the ball as much. When you have a Jason Beck offense, I've seen Jason Beck offenses that get plays off faster than Oregon. I've seen them do a lot of different things. And this Utah fan base isn't going to be used to them going and scoring 45, 50 points a game. And when you score that many points, it gives the other team the opportunities to do that as well. And so they're going to be in shootouts. They've got to step up, and the defense has to be better conditioned. Because as much as every rep matters for the offense, if you take one play off on the defense, especially at corner, that's 6. And that's what these guys have to understand, that the whole entire season rests on the shoulders of the cornerbacks in this room.
It does. And it's going to be incredibly important for them to produce. And look, when they get beat, then it comes time for the safeties to step up. That is the next group I want to talk about with Moose. And I want to get his thoughts on the special teams as well, because I know we don't always talk about special teams, but you lost their punter, lost their kicker too. There's a lot of turnover there. So how is it going to shake out? We're going to continue to discuss Utah spring ball preview in one moment. Today's show is brought to you by our great friends at TurboTax. This message is from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering, worrying if you were going to get any money back. That's taxes in the past. But how about now? when you look at it, taxes, the matching with TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today, that's what you get with TurboTax. That security of knowing, hey, no more waiting, no more wondering, and no more worrying. Now taxes is matched with that Turbo expert who can help you do your taxes as soon as right now. An expert who gives you taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert will find you every deduction possible and file every form and every investment, everything 100% accurately. All so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worry. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only on the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com. If you want to get help with your taxes today, make sure you check out TurboTaxes right now. Moose Bingham back with me here, freshening up on his notes again before we're going to talk about the Utah safeties. Moose, I love this safety duo. I thought last year's safeties were still really good. Teo Johnson had some tackling issues. I think that's what leads him to return to Utah. I really like the way that Rabbit Evans closed the year. And Alakai Gilman, I thought, did a lot of good things. I have big expectations for the duo of Evans and Johnson. I think both those guys are going to be much more, just stand out even more, like a Cole Bishop, Sione Vaki, like a Julian Blackman, Terrell Burgess. That's the type of impact I'm expecting out of Teo Johnson and Rabbit Evans. Nate Ritchie's really good too. He'll factor into this. But to me, Evans and Johnson are the top two guys for Utah at the safety spots.
Actually, looking at this, do you know what I think they're going to do? I think
What do you think they're going to
move Nate Ritchie to nickel and put
You
him
think
in
so?
the box. And
You
I
think he can hang?
I think he can.
Go Cooper DeJean giving you confidence that about he can make it battle around down there?
Well, I think having a big body in the box that can jam a slot receiver at the line is huge. And I think having Smith Snowden in there, I really love Teo Johnson, and Rabbit Evans is phenomenal. Both of these guys are studs. You've got a lot of senior leadership because Teo is really a senior. He's a redshirt junior. Evan Rabbit, he's a senior transfer. And Nate Ritchie, he's a redshirt senior as well that's been a missionary. And so I remember breaking his film down 20 years ago, it feels, while he was in high school. And I'm like, they got a steal in Nate Ritchie.
Agreed.
But you've got the redshirt freshman, Jackson Benny, as well in there. And so that's another nice addition. So there's four guys that I really like, but I don't know how you can keep Nate Ritchie off the field. And what I love about Utah is they find a way to get the best 11 players on the field. And Nate Ritchie is one of those 11 players. So you could be having some 3 safety formations type things going on because of how good Nate Ritchie is, his big body. But I can't say enough about Teo Johnson. Yeah, he had some tackling issues. He fought through a lot of injuries. He's fought through a lot. He's a tough kid, and it's hard to tackle when you're hurt. And you're right. Rabbit, my goodness. When Alakai Gilman was kind of here and there, Rabbit came in and just reminded us he's a stud. And these safeties, coached by Morgan Scally, there's an expectation in that room. You're expected to get drafted if you're a multi-year starter at the University of Utah. You're expected to make a lot of money. You're expected to give back to the program. And here's the deal. The expectations are no joke. These guys knew what they signed up for when they came to Utah, and they're ready to take it to the next level.
They are. And Moose, I got to go back to your Nate Ritchie thing. I don't like it. I love it. I think that's a fantastic idea. I absolutely agree with you. Nate Ritchie's a guy that I want to get on the field for Utah. I think that makes a lot of sense playing him at nickel. I do think he could hang on some of your third and longs. I'd probably rather roll with the traditional defensive back. And I do think some of these guys will provide good depth, but I absolutely believe that's a look that Utah should use. Utah's been at their best when they were able to play their safeties in the box close to the line. Cole Bishop, Sione Vaki, like these guys, they've been difference makers in the past, right?
Yeah. And I mean, Ritchie's a big dude.
Yeah.
He has a linebacker type body that you can shift to linebacker as well. And putting him in the box with his hips, with his flexibility, with everything he brings, I think that's a recipe for success right there.
I absolutely do too. I'm incredibly excited to see what Ritchie, Johnson, and as well as Rabbit all bring. Don't forget, Rabbit's a guy, you talked about his success. I mean, that Iowa State game, 12 tackles, 6 of which were solo, had 9 against Arizona State too. Like he showed out and made some impressive plays several times last season. So I'm really looking forward to him, and Teo is just another guy too. I mean, he was right up there towards the top of team in tackles. I don't expect like anything crazy from him at spring ball. He's just going to be really good. I mean, 70 total tackles last year, just a 1 interception, 4 passes defended, but he prevented a lot of big plays. Back another year, healthier, big things ahead for Teo. So we really like this safety room. Corner room's got some questions, maybe even that the safety room can help out with, because that top 3 guys, that's as good of a top 3 as I think you'll find in the Big 12. Maybe I'm missing some other safety out there, but I really like that combination there. But the question I have then, Moose, is as good as I feel about the safeties, I am very intrigued by Utah's special team situation, especially the kicker spot. You lose a guy in Cole Becker who was up and down. I think had some nice moments, but definitely like left some kicks out on the field that he'd love to have back. And unless it's Dylan Curtis, the freshman, it's going to be Joey Cheek. And we didn't see him last year. Didn't see him 2 years ago. But we did see him in 3 years ago. We saw him in 23, though. 7 for 7 on PAT attempts. Made the 37-yarder against Weber State. He's a guy who's been around for a while. What's your confidence in Cheek?
Yeah. So Dylan Curtis is really good.
You think Dylan Curtis as a freshman will be Utah's starting kicker?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, Dylan's a kid that I've known for years now, and I think he's a phenomenal human being. I think that Dylan, the reason he's going to Utah is because he wanted somewhere where he could start immediately. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of part of the deal. They're like, hey, the job's open, but if you want to come here, you're going to be our guy. It's a Louis Sakota type situation. Win the job in fall camp, and you're our guy the next 4 years. Wow. But Dylan Curtis, he was making 60-plus yard field goals in games. He's doing it off the ground. His kickoffs are going to be out of the end zone. Kyle Whittingham won't have to worry about that when you have a leg of his magnitude. He's an All-American walking into the University of Utah ready to go. And the thing is, when you get to the University of Utah, the posts go from 26 feet to like 23 feet. Like the posts get smaller. He's going to have some freshman struggles. If Utah can endure that, you've got an NFL leg sitting on the bench right there, ready to go at any time. And I think that opens up the offense, gives them courage to kick those 55-plus yard field goals. I mean, here's the deal. Dylan Curtis is as good as you're going to get coming out of high school. If you keep developing him, if he gets his technique perfect, there's nothing that can stop this young man. And that's what I like about Dylan. He's going to immediately elevate your kickoff team. He's going to immediately elevate the length that you can kick your field goals from. And you just have to work on accuracy a little bit from him going from, I think it's 24 to 18 and a half, 24 and a half in high school, 18 and a half in college. And if he's ready for that adjustment, for the narrowing of the accuracy, then we're going to have a 4-year starter or possibly 3-year starter into the NFL in a kid like Dylan Curtis.
Well, that's all I needed here. I'm convinced too. Yeah, Dylan Curtis all the way, man. I love the way that sounds. And I think you're right. I think just with Joey's been on this team for a while, hadn't always produced. It does feel like that, hey, this is the guy. It's gonna. I think you're right. I think it's gonna be Curtis. And I feel a similar way about that in another position battle. Well, and part of that being he's the only punter on the roster. But Oren Phillips, the Missouri transfer. I mean, the sophomore, 6'3". You lose on Jack Bomeister to Texas, but you're able to add a guy with Missouri, like who was at Missouri. I think this was a really good get for Utah. And I do think Phillips is going to be a guy where I don't think we'll see a massive drop off from last year. Bomeister was really good, probably better, but I think Phillips will do a fine job punting for Utah.
So where's Phillips from?
Missouri, transferred in.
Originally.
He's from Australia.
There you go. That's all I need to know. Okay. Here's the other thing with Phillips. He has one of the most glorious mullets I've ever seen.
It is very glorious. As someone lacking hair, I'm very jealous.
Anyone that reps a mullet like that, I'm just like, this is either the top specialist in the country or something else. Yeah. And we know he's one of the top specialists in the country. Utah takes special teams so seriously. They know what to do with a Aussie-style rugby punter. Sharif Shah does a phenomenal job with the special teams, and so do all the other coaches. They usually break it up, but I think Sharif is officially the special teams coach.
I think so.
But, I mean, my expectations for Oren, I expect 42 yards plus. I expect 4-0 hang, and I expect him to pin our opponents deep and let the defense just bring the dagger to their throat, to be honest with you, and allow the offense to get after it. And so with that, he's had that high level experience. He's not coming in as a freshman. He's going to do great, and I'm not worried about it.
Well, and I was a little worried about the kicking spot, and I'd looked at Curtis's numbers, but the fact that someone who knows the kicking and special teams games as well as you, my friend, I think a lot of Utah fans should be feeling very good about Curtis's opportunity that he'll have coming up, and get a veteran like Phillips in. That's incredibly exciting as well. Just like it's always exciting when we have the man, the myth, the legend, Moose Bingham on here. Moose, you are a man of many talents, so please tell everyone what you have going on right now.
I just started a new podcast called Athletic Audit, and JT will be on the next episode. I've had DJ Cavender on there. I've had some good people so far, but we're comparing film, guys that are coming up under the radar versus legends in our eyes. Guys like Jackson Powers Johnson, guys like Nate Ritchie is a kid's film that I would break down, who I think has some of the top high school film in the country that hasn't quite realized it. Kids like Isaac Wilson, Ike Garcia, these top guys that never lost a rep. I mean, Spencer Fano, I don't think I ever watched him lose a rep since I started covering him.
I don't think so.
And I'm like, this freaking kid, he doesn't lose a rep in high school. He doesn't lose a rep in college. He just gets it done, and he's a stud. And that's what I want to go back and help kids realize what to look for, what their film needs to look like if they want to go to a school like the University of Utah.
Make sure you guys head over and subscribe to Moose's show today. Moose, always appreciate you making the time to come on, my friend. Thank you.
Anytime. Love you, JT.
Love you too, brother. Appreciate you. And Moose Bingham, who was very well studied today. I always appreciate you coming on prepared as well, my friend. So you're the man. That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. We'll be back tomorrow talking the latest in Utah football, Utah athletics, and Utah recruiting. We hope you'll join us then.